Indiana Fever fan, if you're a Caitlin Clark fan, it was a brutal game to sit through. No Caitlin.
The Indiana Fever's playoff game against the Atlanta Dream was nothing short of a catastrophe for fans, particularly those who idolize Caitlin Clark. Without her on the court, the game was a painful, disheartening spectacle that left supporters reeling. The absence of Clark, alongside other key players like Sophie Cunningham and Chloe Bai, turned what could have been a competitive matchup into a brutal reality check for the Fever. The final score of 80-68 in favor of the Dream barely scratches the surface of the devastation. This wasn't just a loss. It was a thorough dismantling that exposed every flaw in the Fever's roster and strategy, leaving the team looking like a shadow of itself, disjointed, uninspired, and frankly irrelevant without its star player. For anyone who bleed Fever blue, sitting through this game was an exercise in frustration, a stark reminder of how heavily the team relies on Clark's presence. The absence of Caitlin Clark was the story of the night. Without her, the Fever didn't just lose a player, they lost their identity, their spark, and their hope. The Atlanta Dream didn't merely win, they dominated, exploiting every weakness with ruthless precision. The Fever's performance was so lackluster that it felt like a betrayal of the fans who showed up expecting a fight. The crowd, noticeably sparse despite claims of a sellout, was vocal in its disappointment, chanting for Clark's return almost as soon as the game unraveled. And who could blame them? The team on the floor looked nothing like the one that had captured attention all season, largely thanks to Clark's brilliance. Without her, the Fever were exposed as a squad that struggles to hold its own, raising serious questions about their playoff viability. The Fever's so-called Big Three, Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and Natasha Howard, were supposed to step up in Clark's absence. Instead, only Mitchell showed up with any semblance of urgency. She poured in 27 points in 33 minutes, shooting 9 for 18 from the field, and was the lone bright spot in an otherwise dismal performance. Mitchell played with heart, fighting through traps and carrying the offensive load while her teammates floundered. She was the only player who seemed to grasp the gravity of a playoff game, giving everything she had to keep the Fever in contention. But one player, no matter how talented, can't carry an entire team against a determined opponent like the Dream. The box score tells a grim tale for the rest of the roster, with Boston and Howard delivering performances that ranged from underwhelming to outright embarrassing. Aaliyah Boston, the former #1 overall pick and a player heralded as a cornerstone of the franchise, was virtually invisible. She managed just 8 points on 3 for 9 shooting, a stat line that looks slightly less horrific thanks to a couple of garbage time buckets. But those who watched the game know the truth. Boston was a non-factor for most of the night. She didn't demand the ball, didn't fight for position, and played with a passivity that was shocking for a player of her pedigree. This was a playoff game, a moment for stars to shine, yet Boston looked like a role player content to fade into the background. For a player expected to anchor the Fever alongside Clark, her lack of aggression was a glaring failure. 9 shot attempts in a game where the team's top guard was sidelined is unacceptable. It's not just a bad night. It's a lack of basketball IQ and leadership. Natasha Howard's performance was equally, if not more, disappointing. A 2-time All-Star with 3 WNBA championships and a proven track record of scoring, Howard was brought in to be a major piece of the Fever's puzzle. Last season, she averaged over 17 points per game, showcasing her ability to dominate. Yet against the Dream, she mustered a measly 5 points on 2 for 7 shooting. 7 shot attempts? That's it? For a player with her experience and accolades, that's an unforgivable lack of effort. In a game where the Fever needed their veterans to step up, Howard played like someone who'd already checked out. Her performance was an insult to the fans who expected her to rise to the occasion, especially with Clark out. Instead of seizing the moment, she shrank from it, leaving the Fever without the secondary scoring punch they desperately needed. The expectation was clear. Without Clark, Boston and Howard were supposed to take charge, demand the ball, and drive the offense. They were meant to prove they could be more than supporting pieces in Clark's orbit. Instead, they failed spectacularly. Mitchell was left to fight a losing battle, while Boston and Howard stood by as the Dream tore through the Fever's defense and exposed their offensive shortcomings. It was a winnable game, a chance to steal a crucial playoff victory on the road, but the Fever squandered it. The Dream adjusted after the first quarter, ramping up their physicality and slowing the pace, and the Fever had no answer. The second quarter was where the game slipped away as Atlanta's intensity overwhelmed a Fever team that seemed unprepared and unwilling to adapt. The coaching didn't help matters. Stephanie White, the Fever's head coach made questionable decisions that only compounded the team's struggles. The rotations were baffling. How do Boston and Howard combine for just 16 shot attempts in a playoff game? These are supposed to be the team's pillars, yet they were barely involved in the offense. Instead, players like Odyssey Sims 7 shots, Aerial Powers 4, and Shaw Petty 2 were taking shots that should have gone to the team stars. White's failure to get the ball to her best players was a tactical misstep that cost the Fever dearly. Her technical foul, which some saw as a fiery moment of leadership, was little more than a distraction. It didn't inspire the team or change the game's momentum. It was a hollow gesture in a losing effort. White's post-game comments offered little clarity or reassurance, leaving fans wondering if she has a plan to fix the mess. The officiating was another sore point. The referees were inconsistent, missing calls and issuing phantom fouls that frustrated both teams. The WNBA's officiating has long been a point of contention, and this game was no exception. But while the refs were far from perfect, they weren't the reason the Fever lost. Bad calls don't excuse a lack of effort or execution. The Fever stars, minus Mitchell, failed to show up, and that's where the blame lies. Fans were quick to point out the obvious. Without Caitlin Clark, this team is a shell of itself. The crowd at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, noticeably thin despite reported sellout numbers, reflected that reality. Empty seats dotted the arena, a visual testament to the fans' reliance on Clark to bring them out. The energy was flat, the atmosphere lackluster, and it undoubtedly affected the players. Mitchell was out there parring her heart out, but the sparse crowd offered little support, as if they'd rather be anywhere else. Fever fans are savvy. They know Clark is the team's lifeblood. Her absence didn't just hurt the team's performance. It highlighted how dependent the franchise is on her star power. Clark stretches defenses, draws double teams, and creates opportunities for her teammates. Without her, Boston and Howard were forced to create their own shots, and they crumbled under the pressure. Mitchell faced constant traps, and the offense stalled. It's a simple basketball truth that the coaching staff and players failed to address. Fans who traveled hours, spending hard-earned money on tickets and accommodations, came to see Clark, not a lackluster performance from Boston and Howard. Those 8 and 5-point outputs were a slap in the face to supporters who expected more from the team's supposed stars. The Fever's 3-point shooting was another glaring issue. Boston, Howard, and Lexi Hulk combined to go 1 for 8 from beyond the arc, a pathetic showing in an era where the three-pointer is a cornerstone of modern basketball. 8 out of 29 field goal attempts from those 3 players resulted in just 1 made 3, a stat line that's not just bad, it's embarrassing for a professional team in 2025. The lack of outside shooting allowed the Dream to pack the paint and neutralize the Fever's offense, further exposing their reliance on Clark's ability to stretch the floor. This game wasn't just a loss, it was a wake-up call for the Fever's front office. Caitlin Clark isn't just their best player, she's their brand, their ticket seller, their reason for relevance. Without her, the team reverts to the forgettable squad it was before her arrival. Fans aren't showing up to watch Boston and Howard underperform. They're there for Clark's electrifying play and the hope she brings to a franchise that's struggled for years. The empty seats, the lack of energy, and the fans' vocal demands for Clark's return all point to a harsh truth. This team lives and dies with her. The Fever are playing a dangerous game by allowing performances like this to happen. Fans are loyal, but their patience isn't infinite. They've watched the team struggle for relevance, and Clark's arrival finally put them on the map. But games like this, where the team collapses without her, risk alienating the fanbase that has embraced her.